Good morning. The Bangalore Literature Festival, our city's flagship literary festival, and perhaps the only literary festival in the world that is crowd-funded, a festival you all made happen. We are happy to be caught committing a crime, the crime of celebrating a deliciously dark genre in a diabolical twist that all crime writers would be proud of. BLF presents Dead Right, Bengaluru's first genre festival entirely dedicated to crime writing. It is going to be 2 days of whodunits, why done it, and how done it. So hang on to the edge of your seats and let your pulses race. Presenting the first session, Murder in the Metropolis. Cities are loud, crowded, and constantly in motion, but crime stories notice what slips through. For our first panel this morning, please welcome Anuja Chauhan, a Bengaluru Hudgi now, and a best-selling author, Rudraneil Sengupta, journalist who has come all the way from Delhi in conversation with Shrabonti Bagchi. Give them a big round of applause.
Hi everyone, good morning. Thanks for coming here bright and early for the first session of Dead Right, our brand new crime writing festival. The first session we start with is with Anuja Chauhan and Rudraneil Sengupta. Their books are very different, but like from each other, but they also stand out for on their own. And I would like them to tell you a little bit about the books, about their respective books. Anuja's is called Fast, the Fast and the Dead, and Rudraneil's is The Beast Within. And yeah,
Yeah, hi, hello. Uh, okay, so I sort of segued into crime writing. I've written 7 novels. The last two have been crime books. I was writing in the lockdown and felt very murderous and didn't know what to do with myself. So said, okay, I'll just, put it all down here. So it's interesting. It's called the Metropolis because the first book is called Club You to Death, which is about, I guess, in Bangalore, like a Bangalore club in Delhi, like a Delhi Gymkhana club kind of a little ecosystem where everybody knows each other. And then there's this really hot trainer who all the aunties go to for Zumba and weightlifting and stuff. And he's found under a barbell. It was great fun for me and gave me lots of opportunity to, just dive into Delhi society and all the layers and all those delicious little textures of that. I had great fun doing that. And then the second one, which is set in Bangalore, is called The Fast and the Dead, which takes up my favorite, some of my favorite topics like the Karwa Chauth fast, which is, the fast in the title. And it talks a lot about women. I think there's a lot of single women in that book of all sorts of ages. And in that, basically, the plot device is that a lady fights with her husband while keeping her Karwa Chauth fast, and she's so angry that she breaks the fast and she eats like 16 momos with chutney and the pineapple pastry and like all kinds of stuff, and finally a diet coke to wash it down. And her husband dies, like he actually actually dies, which is great fun. And
which is of course great fun.
yeah, it was good fun that, oh my god, she broke a fast and he died. So I had fun working with, the superstition and the way our society, the culture, religion, all those things work. That was the second book. And it's fun, isn't it, to write these? Do you write them for fun?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I write for fun and I write for wish fulfillment as well. It's like I do things with my characters that I wish I could do, but I know I never will. So my book, The Beast Within, is a police procedural. It's set in Delhi, and basically it's about a group of Delhi police officers who are a unit of the crime branch, and they're investigating a death, an unnatural death. It's basically a young domestic worker, underage domestic worker, who's fallen from the balcony of the house that she works in. And you'll be surprised if you Google how much of that happens in India. It's like, almost like an epidemic of underage domestic workers who fall to their death. And At first everybody thinks it's suicide, but the inspector, my protagonist Prashant Kumar, he there's something in his past that kind of urges him to look beyond that the suicide theory and see if there's something else happening. And against all the advice of his senior officers and against all the system, he kind of pushes the investigation and keeps going back to it. And then what happens? That's what the book is about. But the book is also about, as police, one of the things that's very special about them is that they get to very closely observe everything, whether it's people or the geography of the city that they are concerned with. Their main job is to closely observe. So that gives the writer an opportunity also to put my observations through their eyes and see and show you how I see the city, how I see the social divisions and people. And so that's what this is. It's a very closely observed chronicle of Delhi society and Delhi as a city.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is why, Murder in the Metropolis. And actually, Anuja's book is also set in a very, distinctive kind of part of Bangalore, which is, you immediately know what she's talking about, how it looks, etc. So yeah, so okay, let's start with the setting and the location then. So, did the setting provide a sort of impetus for writing the novel? Like, did the setting come first and the plot later for both of you?
Certainly for me. I mean, how the book came into being is that I was doing some long form stories as a journalist about crime in Delhi, mostly from a social angle on how it impacts people and livelihoods and communities,
Migration and
migration, all why does it happen and what it leaves in its wake. And So while I was doing this, I was one part of my reporting was that I was embedded with a crime branch unit, and I spent about a year just sort of going with them to their different cases, all the things that they were handling, raids, all kinds of things, and I got to see parts of Delhi which I would never have seen otherwise, and it was an amazing experience for me, sometimes very heartbreaking, sometimes like I can't believe that there's this also in Delhi, um, and sometimes lots and lots of fun.
did the unit ever investigate a murder? Like,
Yeah. So the way Delhi police works, it's very funny that they don't have a murder unit separately.
right. As
So the
you
crime
explained right
branch,
in the beginning of the
yeah.
book, yeah.
So the crime branch kind of investigates anything that is seen as a serious crime. So they can be investigating a robbery or a murder,
Kidnapping.
and all simultaneously, all of this is unfolding at the same time. um, so I got to meet drug dealers and gangsters and sit with them and see who they are and how they talk and what they do, um, and so my primary impetus was the setting, was that, and I was so excited about it. And I remember that when I was writing my reported pieces, of course, you have certain restrictions, journalistic restrictions, as well as word limits to what you can do. So I can't completely give vent to how I want to describe a place or a person or what I think is going on in their heads, which, of course, is a complete no-no in journalism. And so, and I thought, okay, there's so much happening in my head with these things I'm
To
seeing
become a
that
novel.
I want to have an outlet for it, and that's how I started writing the book.
Anuja, for you, was the setting, I mean, for you, of course, it was a departure from writing books which are set in Delhi and in a certain kind of Delhi society and, a milieu. But so then this is the first book that's set in Bangalore. And although you've been living in Bangalore for a while now, so did the setting sort of, make you write this book?
Yes, I think every new book that I write somehow is connected to the book that came previously because there were things I couldn't do there that now I want to do. And it took me a long time to have the courage to actually write about Bangalore because, I mean, I've just been here 12 years and my
Just
Kannada is
12 years.
like very bad. I can make myself understood just about. But the place I really fell in love with was Shivaji Nagar because Shivaji Nagar, everyone speaks Hindi. That's amazing because I think there's a massive Muslim population. There's lots of Marwaris. There's lots of Hindi being spoken, and I immediately fell so much at home in that. And I just love the fact that you go down Kamraj Road, or you go down that Narayan Pillai Road, and you go into all those little areas, and there are temples, churches, mosques, people speaking all kinds of dialects, selling all kinds of stuff. It was fantastic. And again, as I had just come out of writing a book set like in the Delhi Gymkhana Club, where everyone was so proper, and everyone was, there are signs outside saying dogs and servants not allowed. Like, that's a sign that was still there last time I checked. Maybe most recently removed, but now it probably says something else, like
I'm sure it's
Congress is
still.
not allowed. I don't know what. But like, so this was a very different slice of that. And I really enjoyed that. And I spent a lot of time in those streets because I really enjoy the street food and just chatting with people and going up little staircases and stuff. So it seemed like a great
So you
setting.
felt like, okay, I need to set a
Yeah,
novel
no, I think
here.
it was the market. It was lovely that there was a marketplace, because market energy is fantastic. The fact that everyone sort of pulls you in and has got stuff. The other thing interesting that happened in this book is that it's got a lot to do with stray dogs. And
Yeah.
stray dogs is a massive issue everywhere, including in Bangalore. So, like I was earlier telling you about the lady who prays that, who breaks her fast because she's so angry with her husband. And meanwhile, how he dies is that there's another lady who hates the stray dogs, and she's like an old Mangalorean woman, and she has an estate, and she has a shotgun, and she comes out
Which is
roaring
called Gunny
mad.
Boy. Which is called Gunny Boy. Like
Gunny boy.
the
The
gun has
gun
a
is called Gunny
name,
boy.
by the way.
And she comes out and she's so angry, and the street dogs are barking, and she shoots at the street dogs. And a stray bullet hits the gentleman whose wife was angry with him and broke her fast.
Or that's what we are made to think
Yeah, of
initially.
course. And later on, it's highly sus, and the ballistics and the trajectory, and it's all wrong, and it's a big fake. But the I loved the politics about the stray dogs.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that. How every RWA in India, it's always a burning issue. There are the haters, and then there are the feeders, and there's a vast majority of people who don't give a damn, but are somehow caught up in this. And like the parallels are crazy. Any little underprivileged minority group is like the stray dogs. It's just, you just can't escape the parallels. It's crazy how that works.
Actually, surprisingly, Rudraneil's book also has a kind of, like it touches upon the stray dog
Yeah.
issue, because one of the victims is a dog lover, and he sort of, takes care of them. Tell us more about that,
Yeah.
Rudraneil.
So it's very funny that you started talking about the stray dog issue, because if this session was about dogs, I would speak so much more, because I'm a feeder myself. I feed dogs. I take care of about 180 dogs. And I do behavioral counseling with people who are afraid of dogs or who don't get along. And I take them for walks, and I show them how to be okay around street dogs, and what are the triggers for the dogs, and what they are doing wrong that makes conflict happen, and things like that. So in this book, obviously I had to, and this is a huge part of my life, because you can imagine, like, taking care of 180 dogs is almost a full-time job, basically. And uh, so in this book, I had to have a character who does the same thing, because I know this world so well. So we have one such person who gets into horrible fights with. She's a cop, but she gets into a horrible fight with one of these RWA people over this thing, because the RWA person keeps insisting that you have to remove all the dogs, and everybody's complaining that they're biting, and the cop asks, "Can I see proof or evidence that the dog is biting?" And he has no evidence and no
Yeah.
proof. And it gets into this verbal altercation, which is something that I'm very familiar with, having been at the receiving end of it all the time. um, and in fact, my second book, which features the same set of characters, which is in the works right now, is heavily involved with street dogs. It starts with Meera, the policewoman who likes dogs. It starts with her looking for one of her dogs who goes missing on Diwali night, and then it snowballs into various different things. Yeah.
Right.
So the thing with stray dogs is that was an important thing for me in the book was that stray dogs have their own hierarchy. They tend to snarl at billionaires and grovel in front of beggars, and that is the problem. That they've got their own system, and it does not necessarily
Match the-
match the way it's working in the human sphere, and especially in the RWS.
That's a very astute observation. This is true that dogs don't care about your
They don't care.
social or
Yeah.
economic status whatsoever.
That's why it's so unsettling.
Yes.
Yeah, it's unsettling for the millionaires that, yeah, somebody is not like,
In fact, if there are people in the audience who are scared of street dogs, please look me up. I will get rid of your fear. You will live a much better life.
as a cat parent and somebody in my apartment, sorry, we are just talking a lot about this, I understand, but I feel like, I should speak up for cats as well. So in my apartment we have a problem with cats, and like people are scared of cats and they hate it when we feed cats, so we've had like massive fights over that as well, and I am like at the forefront of the
Being scared of cats is a whole different level of
yes, it's a whole different level. Plus they find them annoying, they poop in the playground and stuff like that. Yeah, but but yeah, people have problems with animals essentially because they feel that everything belongs to them,
No,
and
in
why
the
should the
cat's
animals have
hierarchy,
any
the cat
space?
is the royalty. Everybody else is a minion.
Yeah, but
That's their system.
cats are also very poorly treated in apartment complexes, etc. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, okay. Now that we've had that whole animal activism digression, so I want to ask you guys. So like, since we are speaking about those communities, etc. Do you feel that both of your books could only have been set in these communities, in these locations, like the plot of your book? Both your books, I mean, could only have happened here. And how did you achieve that specificity of location in your writing?
It's interesting you ask that because like the first book in this series, Club You Did That, got made into a film, and that was set in the pretty much the Delhi Gymkhana Club. That's where they set it. And with the second book, I got a lot of questions on this. That, oh, you've gone and set it in Bangalore. Can we really locate this book to Delhi? We'll put it in Chandni Chowk or something. And I don't know, and they were working very hard at it and saying, but it'll work. But it just didn't work for me. It seemed to be, maybe just, we tend to be self-indulgent, but I feel that if you're writing something, you're trying to be true to it. Of course, every city in India, if you slice it down, you'll get the same slices. Like if you go into the soil, you'll have the same layers, so they are parallels. So maybe it's a little self-indulgent of me to say, no, it can only be Shivaji Nagar, and maybe sure, it could be many other localities in many other cities. But as a writer, you commit wholly to it and write it very specifically.
No, and I think, your Dondi Pais, the Mangalorean lady with a shotgun, could only be in Shivaji Nagar in Bangalore. I mean, I don't think that,
in some crumbling house. Like, it's very correct that she's there.
Yeah.
I think the crime that is at the center of my book, the young domestic worker falling to her death. Like I said, it's like an epidemic. You will find it in Bombay, in Delhi, in Gurgaon, and Noida, and Kolkata, and Bangalore, and Chennai. You will find news reports of this happening. So it happens everywhere. But I was trying to be very, very specific in terms of everything else in the book is very specific to Delhi. Partly because when I read like good police procedurals or crime fiction, one of the things that really fascinates me is how much it brings the location alive. So Higashino in Japan, in Tokyo, and there's so many examples. Seward
The
and
Nordic
Walu.
noir, like the
Nordic noir,
Scandinavian
yeah.
crime, it's like
You really want to know about a city, you read crime fiction about that city. It'll show you all the layers, it'll show you all the geography. And I followed something which I read about. I love these two, they're supposedly the godparents of Nordic noir, Seward and Walu. Yeah,
Walu. I've read quite a few of those books. Yeah.
Right. So I was reading an interview where they said that when they plot out their book, after that, they will go to each location that they have in the book and see the location for themselves. And if their police officer or any of their characters is, let's say, traveling from location A to location B using a certain kind of transport, they will do it themselves to see how much time it takes, what are they seeing when they're taking that transport. And I thought that was amazing. And so I did that for when I was writing my book. So once I had plotted it out, I knew the locations, I knew what is happening where. I traveled to all those each and every one of those locations. I sat there, took my time, noticed everything that's around me. So if Inspector Kumar was going to take the metro from, I don't know, from Ghitorni to Gurgaon, I would take the metro from Ghitorni to Gurgaon, see what I'm seeing outside the window, and
Your journalistic training to
yeah,
sort of
and I took
absorb the
copious
mood.
notes. So everything in my book, in terms of the locale, is very specific and very true. Like if you actually read my book and then go there, you will see the exact same things.
I felt I was there, and as with Habba Gali as well. Although Habba Gali is not a real place in the sense that it's a kind of pastiche of like a lot of Shivaji Nagar and its mood and colors and everything. Right. Okay, let's talk a little bit about motive. So PD James, like whom I really love, like I've read like all her books, and you typically as a crime fiction reader, you start with Sherlock Holmes and Agatha Christie, and then slowly you realize that there's so much more, and then you start discovering new authors and different authors set in different who live in different countries, write in different countries. And PD James is like very quintessentially English, but not your Agatha Christie cozy English, more of more slightly darker and edgier. So she said that the four primary impulses that lead to murder are love, lust, lucre, and loathing. Every kind of murder can be, according to her, mapped to one of these impulses. As a crime writer, like which motive appeals to you the most? I mean, which is the one which seems to have the maximum narrative and dramatic potential?
Tough question, and I think that PD James is totally right. I mean, if I, as you were saying this, I was thinking of. I mean, I don't think there could be any other reasons for. It's pretty
Love,
much income.
lust,
Yeah,
lucre, and loathing. Yeah.
loathing. Yeah, that's basically the four things that will lead to murder. But I don't know if I have a favorite among this. Obviously, in oh, I can't give it away if I
Your
say what.
your plot. Yeah.
Right, but I think what's interesting is the is how you reach the point wherever you start from, whether it's love, lust, lucre, or loathing. How do you reach to the point where you are actually going to kill someone? um, and of course, if you look at loathing or love or lust, mostly in these three things, it can be very unplanned, because you don't know that you have it in you, and something happens, and you snap, and and somebody is dead. With lucre, I suppose it's a much more planned, probably is a more planned way of going about it. So yeah, for me, the interesting thing is how did you get to that position where you're actually going to kill somebody? More than the motivation, that's what interests me. Is what are the circumstances that lead you there, and what do you do yourself with yourself after you have done it? Because obviously everybody wants has a self-preservation instinct, but how far are you willing to go with that self-preservation instinct, after you know that you have done something which will give you a earn the death penalty for you, or put you away behind bars for a very long time? What are you willing to do to make sure that that doesn't happen to you?
No, it's the psychology of it that makes it really interesting. So these are all intense emotions, and they have to be really intense to push you into that place where like your chains are off and your safety rails are off, and it's high stake enough for you to actually snuff the life out of another person. I think that psychological crossing is where it's fascinating. That what is your internal thinking at this point that you're doing this, and like exactly what you said, that what happens to you after, like how it changes your life knowing you've done this. Like in my first murder book, there's the girl, there's some, like, it changes. If you're a party girl, you like to go out, you like to have you can't drink anymore. It's not a safe space because you don't know what you will start babbling after you had like a few drinks and a rager out, and who you'll have this drunken confidence with, because you are that sort of
That's such a good
person,
tip,
and
Anuja.
you're just carrying it around, and you're like, now what, how do I keep this inside? Especially if you got this, so maybe you start writing books or like anonymous blogs where you're just vomiting all this stuff out because it's driving you crazy. So all that is there, and yeah, the four L's are completely what is.
And I'm kind of like impressed, or sort of jealous in a way, of people who are not driven crazy by it. Of course there are people who, for them, taking
But
our
they're
life
not that
is,
interesting to
yeah,
write
you don't
about
think,
to me.
yeah,
"Oh, I'm so cool and chill. I can just murder people and
Yeah,
go off."
yeah.
psychopaths are a totally
No,
different
that's a
genre
different genre,
almost.
but a regular
It's
person who's driven by something like lucre or,
Yeah.
loathing, lust,
loathing, love,
and
We'll
or
have
just,
to. We'll have to
social
deal with it.
condemnation. I don't know which one of this covers that. Your standing in society,
loathing.
loathing,
I
really. Like
think
you've got so
loathing.
much to
Or maybe
lose.
lucre.
It's हाँ मतलब कि reputation, being a good person, people's perceived notion of you and the reality of
Will you kill
you,
for that?
you'll kill for it. So I
Will
don't
you?
know
You
what,
will.
like,
Yeah.
if you would kill somebody to keep your good reputation intact
Yeah.
and just your everything nice
And
in
that has
your
been like a
life.
huge
I'm not
motive
very
in
sure
all of
what
crime
which
fiction.
of these four is that, but I find those kind of people very interesting to write about. The mind of a monster, I'm sure, is very interesting, and it's nice to have glimpses of that and like goosebumpy sections in the book which reveal that thing to you and saying, "Oh my God, look what's inside this." It's like finding, okay, cockroach is a loaded word nowadays, but like, in your, like, your lovely kitchen or something, and you say, "Oh my God, roaches." That sense in the book when you find that.
So when you're plotting,
Sorry,
do you
just went all over
leave
the place.
certain breadcrumbs for the writer, for the reader to sort of pick up on, like, do you foreshadow in that sense? To sort of, to set up
Yeah.
for the big reveal without giving it away, but so that it does not seem like it came out of nowhere, the butler did it, that kind of, to avoid that kind of
That's
trope.
damn tricky. And while I was writing my romances, I did not have that issue at all. I
Because
mean,
we know that,
every
boy
breadcrumb
meets
is there to
girl.
be savored and say, "Oh my God, he likes her. He totally likes her. He gave that away." But here, though, you have to be clever because you have to put the breadcrumb, but it can't be an obvious breadcrumb. So you have to put another red herring, like a bigger crumb that will misdirect people there. And it's terrible when you give your manuscripts to people to read because it's awful, especially when it's my family, who are my main readers, and I tell them, "Look, this is the plot and this is the murderer and this is what I'm going for." So they know the murder is. So I can't give it to them because they know. So you can't, and you can't surprise yourself. It's very strange. See, because you know who the murderer is, you can't read it critically because you know. So you can't fake your surprise. So the quest for good readers who will read it and will come back to you, all that became very complex.
For you, was that a problem?
No, no, I mean, I wrestled with it right as I was starting to write, but then I very soon realized that if I'm writing a police procedural, I don't need to leave breadcrumbs
Yeah,
at all,
that's true.
because the thrust of the police procedural is how the police work, and the way they work is very methodical and cut and dry, and it's all about the questions and answers, and you will just keep asking, keep asking, keep asking, and you get like a all the information that you want from those questioning sessions. You want to see where your mobile phone was at the time of whatever crime was happening, the location of your phone. You're looking through reams and reams of call data. You're going through accounts and all these things. So it's very forensic stuff. So there's no need for breadcrumbs as such, but what there is a need for is to, when there's an interrogation happening, nobody is giving you a straight answer, right? For whatever reason, they might have a completely different reason. They might have nothing to do with the crime, but they people are
He's
not going
always
to
hiding
be
something.
always hiding something. Nobody wants to tell the truth. Now, the job of the police is to sift through that, and for that to come alive for the reader, I need to have some echoes of that happening through the book.
Yeah,
So you
very
need
interesting.
to see that questioning happen on say page 20, and on page 50 the cop will refer back to that, saying that, okay, but that time when you said this, you said something else. This time when I'm talking to you, you're saying something different. And so that's how my breadcrumbs work. It's the cop remembering that there is a discrepancy in the statement, and then bringing that out, and then pushing that till you get to another discrepancy, and then pushing that and pushing that. And in fact, my cop in fact feels unhappy that he has to do this for a living. He feels that it's very abusive. It's a kind of, it is in a way abusive to keep going at a person in that way. So yeah.
No, but that's very interesting because for the reader also, they have to pay attention to that dialogue and they have to, like, it's those are clues actually. Like the conversation contains all the clues and like to what's happening, and you get a sense of, oh, something is missing here, something is wrong, and that really, like, gives you that interest in the book. So since we are talking of police procedurals, actually I wanted to ask both of you, and that was my next question, that although both the books are very different tonally and in style, and in terms of the reading experience as well, both are fabulous books and fantastic, make for fantastic reading, very different, but both, like, please get author copies and, like, get them signed, etc. And but both are at their heart actually police. I mean, Anuja's investigator is also a cop, and although in this particular book he's not he is actively investigating, but he's on vacation and he stumbles, so it's a busman's holiday and he kind of has to step in. So how much did you guys learn about especially Anuja, I want to know from you, like, how the police works or the functioning of police departments.
Uh, See, I did not want to, I was trying to write the kind of crime novels that I enjoy. And didn't want to focus too much on the cop, because then if you focus too much on him, then there's everybody else goes a bit of a toss. And I think when I started writing the first book, it was a time where there were a lot of series about these tortured policemen with this crazy life at
All detectives
home,
nowadays are
and
mostly
yeah, all these
tortured.
tortured people. And I didn't want a tortured man. I didn't want to spend a long time writing about him. And so I have so my research was more like soft. So I call up my cop friends and say, okay, if this man is this old, where would he be living? How much money would he be earning? Where would he typically be going on a holiday? What is the idea of a good time? More like social clues rather
To build
than
his character.
to build his character. Say कि अच्छा इनका take home इतना होगा, इनकी favorite whiskey का brand ये होगा, this is where he would probably go for a holiday. So it was more that kind of stuff. And I wanted him to have like a nice marriage and a
Yeah.
wife who he sat in bed with late at night and discussed the case with, in complete violation of like all
Very,
good
very
cop
polar
or whatever.
opposites.
And and then there's like Shalini and ACP Bhavani are discussing stuff, and they have this thing, and she pours out the drinks and they talk about the case. And I just took it there because I wanted him to be the sort of person who gets people to talk to him. His main thing was not forget whatever I'd written, but it was about like his main weapon was sympathetic silence and a really good ability to listen while people ranted and ended up inadvertently spilling stuff that they weren't even planning to, because he's a good listener and he gives you 100% attention. He sits down and sort of metaphorically slides this hot chocolate or this large whiskey at you and says, tell me about your life. So that was what I wanted to write about rather than maybe what actually happened.
No, actually, it's a refreshing change from all the haunted and dark. I mean, I actually, like, a few days ago started watching some crime series, and I was like, is there one detective left who is not depressed AF and is, like, completely,
In some moody city
very
in the
moody
night lights.
and has had like a lot of dark past and trauma in the past, etc. And Rudraneil, not to take away from the book at all, it works fantastically in your book. But yeah, do detectives need to, in your imagination, do they need to be, sort of dark and have internal demons?
In my imagination as well as in my experience, yes, there is a certain amount of truth to this, partly because one is that the police are constantly seeing the worst side of humanity. And I remember this one policeman I was speaking to, and I told him that, what was it like for you when you first started, and he said, on my first day I was called to a traffic accident site, where some truck had run over a person, and he said that when I went there, there was no person. It was just something that was splattered onto the road, and they gave us scrapers. They said scrape the body off. And
That is a scene
yeah,
in
so
your book
and he
as well,
said to
yeah.
me that, I on that day I was standing there with a scraper in my hand, looking at the scene in front of me, and I thought, either I can handle this and then I will be a policeman and I will stay on the force, or I'm going to quit tomorrow. There is no middle path here. um, and so, so to be subjected to that so often in your life is
It's
vastly
traumatizing.
abnormal in a way. And you'll have to find ways as a police officer, to deal with that. That's one thing. And the second thing is because you're always in high pressure and high stress situations, everybody has had trauma in their life sometime or the other. Everybody has had some amount of childhood trauma, and for most people those things are unresolved unless you have gone to therapy for many years. And for most people those are unresolved, and in stressful situations, in situations where you see so much violence, those things start dictating how you're going to behave, what you're going to do, without the person being aware that that's what's happening. So what I'm trying to say is that there is so much intense emotional things to deal with as an officer that it's very easy to be depressed or angry or resort to violence, or not that I'm making any excuse for any of it, but it's the natural kind of progression of
And I think it's also an age factor because I haven't read the book, but my guess is that this is a much younger man,
Yeah.
the detective
Yeah.
versus I'm working with a man in, yeah, yeah. Whereas our guy here is touching 60. And I guess it just, like you find ways to cope on days
Yeah.
that you would see a sight as gruesome as that. You know what is going to happen to you. You
Yeah.
know, I will not be able to sleep tonight. Your wife knows this man needs to be left alone. He needs to be given warm milk and he's going to have a
Right.
bad night. Which is things, I guess, patterns that you come into when you're like a really old fox in that sense,
Yeah.
and you're like at that
Like a
retirement
happy family
age.
life would
Yeah.
would go a long way in
Towards,
towards like making this nice,
yeah,
or more normal.
yeah,
But on the other hand,
yeah.
it's very hard to have a happy family life when your job demands that you're always on the job.
Yeah, of course.
So
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
so then that's another pitfall that you have, that you
Yes.
hardly ever
Yeah.
see your
Yeah.
spouse or your parents or whoever. You're constantly on call. So it's a very tough life, no doubt about it.
Yeah. No, true. Yes, I will never crib about like dark and brooding detectives anymore. Okay, I've no, that makes a lot of sense, Rudraneil. Thank you. Okay, to talk to kind of go into a little different in a slightly different direction. Like Anuja's book is laugh out loud funny. Okay, and it's really really funny. And I was just telling Rudraneil earlier that the book is kind of around this. The crime happens on Karwa Chauth night. So and true to her kind of legacy as like India's probably best known ad writer, ad copywriter and jingle writer. I love that line about Chand, don't be lazy, let me break my Casey. Yeah. So it was a really a laugh out loud moment for me. I was going through it again before this. So tell me a little bit about the use of humor in your book. And actually, Rudraneil, I found a lot of dry humor in your book as well. So tell me a little bit about how both of you used humor.
My cops use humor as a coping mechanism, which is why it's dry. It's like when they're faced with something horrendous, you make a joke about it, be a bro and stuff like that. So it comes easier to men than for women, in my experiences, at least with the officers that I hung out with. Women are more serious and perhaps handle these things better because they take it seriously, and men try to kind of like, oh, make
Yeah,
light
they
of it.
can't deal with their
Yeah, they
feelings.
can't deal with it, so they'll just joke about it. So that's and also because there's so much darkness in the book in terms of what is being investigated and what shows up in the case, that I needed for myself to have some comic breaks while I was writing. So I would actually intentionally do this, is when I was in this flow of writing like dark stuff, and then I will be really depressed myself, like, okay, this is too much, and then I'll be like, okay, I'm going to write something funny for the next chapter. So I would break it up just for myself, and hopefully for the reader that has the same effect, that you don't have to keep plodding through uh, dark material.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a scene where two of the people in the team almost hook up, and then it kind of goes awry,
Oh yeah,
and
it
that
goes-
was
yeah. And for example, I had these moments too. I was when I was embedded with a gangster in Delhi, and I was moving around with this person.
embedded with a gangster in Delhi. Wow, how casually, just casually, he's just saying
No,
that.
it's not hard actually. I mean, if yeah, if you want, it's not hard. But so, and they were like, okay, and I was going wherever they were going. So one of these days they're like, okay, we have to go for this funeral of somebody who has been killed. I said, okay, and they go to some village in Haryana, and and in that Haryanvi household, as is traditional, there was a white sheet on the ground, and all the furniture had been removed, so everybody had to sit on the ground, and the corpse was still somewhere, and the family was there, and so all these, I was with around 8 or 9 men who were all gangsters. They all had guns, which were, and they don't have holsters. Okay, so they had their guns stuck to the back of their jeans, and they're all wearing very tight jeans and trousers, and tight t-shirts and everything, and it was all bulging out, and so they had to sit cross-legged on the floor, much like you are sitting right now. So imagine what happens when you sit like that and the gun barrel is poking you in your butt. So I'm looking around, I'm seeing every 2 seconds everybody is fidgeting and doing this with their gun and doing. So I'm thinking, okay, now it'll be amazing if somebody actually shoots.
Lets it
So I-
out. Yeah, like I mean, it blows
Somebody actually
blows
shoots.
their buttocks off.
And
This is J.K. Rowling. Mr. Potter, not in your rear pocket. Better wizards than you have lost their buttocks.
Correct, I remember. Yeah.
so there's always humor if you are open to it. There's something always happening that's funny.
And Anuja, your forte is humor, and this book has a lot of it as well. Is it difficult to sort of tonally manage something dark and sinister happening and also have the humor?
No, it's fun. That's what like gives it the edge. I think it's great. Whether like you read spaghetti westerns or you read like those Air Force pilots talking on the RT, or trenches humor, or like when you have all these Sanjay Leela Bhansali type movies where all these girls who are sex workers, and they'll have all this like funny stuff that they'll giggle about the client. So they'll always, it's, you think it's a dark space, and then there's humor, so it's always lovely to have that. And it's great fun. Like there was this one scene I got a lot of great feedback on, which was they didn't make a very good, well, even
From
in the
Club You to
movie, it was like a scene that worked really well, where these women who go to the gym every day and are obsessed with working out, and they're saying, if you committed a murder, what would that do to your resting BMI? And तीन चार कीलीज तो ऐसे ही कितने calories burn हो जाएंगे tension को लेके, and they are saying things, they're actually thinking about stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, it's great to write about it, and the darkness, it just brings out the darkness becomes even more darker when there's something light and funny bubbling on top. The contrast makes it great fun to write, and at least in the books that I like to read, I enjoy that kind of
which are a few
contexting.
that come to mind?
I've just recently been reading a lot of Louise Penny,
Okay,
and
Inspector Gamache.
Gamache, and a very interesting Canadian thing, which I really enjoyed. And, like you said, P.D. James and Dorothy Sayers. And when I was young, I used to read a lot of Father Brown, G.K. Chesterton. But the queen for me, I mean, it's Agatha Christie.
Yeah,
There's
plotting,
nobody else.
like,
And
yeah,
it sounds a
nobody can
little
touch.
obvious to say Agatha Christie, but Agatha, like those were books that we all read and loved, because such few words used, and
Yeah.
still the atmosphere is conjured. The
Characters.
characters are delivered, the motives are bang on, and her sleuths, of course, were both of them just fantastic. Yeah.
Rudraneil, I want to ask you, just going back in your career. So Rudraneil's previous book is about the wrestling community of Haryana, and he's written on sports extensively for various publications. So one of the characters kind of has that. So was that because you were like missing that world, and you somehow found a way to, bring it in here?
No, I mean, I'm a big believer in the saying that you should write about what you know, and wrestling was something I was completely immersed in for many years, and it's a world that is invisible to anybody who is not inside that world. You never know that there are like hundreds of akharas in Delhi, and it's really funny. Like you could be in a very congested Delhi locality, like just cars everywhere and concrete everywhere, and then there'll be a door which you have no idea where it leads, and you open the door and you go inside, and there's this humongous neem tree and a humongous people tree and a well and a akhara pit dug there, and you have all these men in their langots, and six packs, wrestling. I'm like, what happened here? What kind of weird portal did I just open and go in? And that's really the way wrestling works, and it's so uh, intrinsic to the culture of both Delhi and Haryana and Punjab, these few states. Previously, it used to be all over India. Now, most of the Indian states have kind of lost that culture, but not so with Punjab, Haryana, and Delhi. Um, and it's a fascinating world. It has its own morality, it has its own ethos, it has its own practices, what you are supposed to do, not supposed to do, what's good, what's not good. And obviously it's a very regimented life that has a lot of rules and regulations. It has an incredibly crazy diet. I remember when Michael Phelps's diet was talked about at one point. There's this New York Times, I think, did an article on that. And the wrestlers in India have that diet, so the first time seeing that, of somebody drinking liters of milk and having like a whole kilo of paneer in one sitting, I'm like, wow. And this man is like lean, with like every muscle is defined. But that's the caloric intake you have to do. And it's fascinating because wrestling is also a very hard sport. It needs a lot of technique and a lot of power and a lot of strength. So everything that your body is capable of is pushed to its limit in the sport.
You know what you
Um,
have to do next, right?
what?
Murder in the Akhada.
Murder in the Akhara.
I think that is called for.
My
It would
wrestler
be
And I
such
friends,
have
an
my
a
wrestler
fantastic
friends will be
victim
so
for you.
unhappy.
Okay, who's the victim?
Guess. I mean, it can only be one person.
I mean, one of the
Bridge
wrestlers.
Bhushan.
Bridge Bush.
She said it.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
It's
There you
sitting there
go.
waiting to be
You
written.
have
It's like,
your
go for
plot right there.
Yeah.
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 So I had to get into that world and give you a glimpse of that through my wrestler.
Before Anuja, I want to ask, before we move on, my last question, before we move on to audience questions, why Karwa Chauth? Why did you think that Karwa Chauth possibly has sinister underpinnings?
Arey, it does, na. I mean, like, acha,
I would be like ready to
I'm
murder.
anyway very drawn. So these are things, these are my pet peeves. Like you said, we build our little agendas, we're pushing our little ideas and putting them in the mouths of the characters that we write about. So I think that it's very in what's happening, the current situation in India right now, whether we're talking religion or we're talking the state of feminism or what your choice, like it's your choice. You keep Casey, you don't keep Casey, up to you. It's all those things I find very interesting. And I bristle. I've become like an angry old woman now. And I bristle. So even when Rudraneil is saying that, women don't crack jokes in the police force and only men do. Yeah, because where do they have the social sanction? There's so much power to cracking a joke. You
You're
go to
right.
any party, the men will be cracking jokes, women will be tittering. It's very infrequently that you'll see the woman is sitting there and she's the one holding the adda and that people are laughing at her stuff. So I feel that to be the funny police guy or the person who cracks the joke or whatever also implies that you're quite comfortable in that setting, and because every time you say something like that, you take a risk, because you don't know if it'll land. And there's that kind of thing. So sorry, that was just some side quest I went on. But the thing is that for me, Karwa Chauth was a great thing. The whole thing that the man's mortality vests on the woman, that she's responsible for it, that she can be blamed for it, how that works in a society so far away from Delhi. You're sitting in Bangalore, these Marwari ladies, keeping this fast. So to me, it was a great.
Like that.
And there's a resurgence of Karwa Chauth in such a big way.
absolutely.
Yeah. So I think those are the kind of things, again, when you say write what you know, I don't, my research is always accidental. Like there'll be something that for some reason, some portal I opened and went down in and said, oh my God, there's a universe here. And then you feel compelled to write about it. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think we can take a few questions from the audience. Can somebody? Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah, hi. A lot of you mentioned, I mean, especially he mentioned how he used to hang out with gangsters, cops, and everything. And you also mentioned write what you know. So, say you did not have access to maybe your cop friends or gangsters, would you still be able to write this way? Maybe use imagination or the stories you've heard, or maybe the movies you've watched.
I mean, I will only speak for myself that I don't think I would be able to do it if I did not have access to this. I'm very grateful that as a journalist, I managed to be in some field where I could get access. I can't speak for anybody else because other people, like I think I don't have a very active imagination. I need to see something to write about it. But of course, that for others that's completely different. I mean, if you read science fiction or speculative fiction, I mean, they are great feats of imagination there. And that's just another way of doing it, and equally amazing. So, but for me, it wouldn't have worked if I didn't do the research.
Okay. Because my question was specifically to crime fiction, because not everybody gets access
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
hang out with gangsters, like you casually said.
Of course, I'm sure it can be done. I'm sure it can be done. But I'm not the person to do it.
Thank you.
No, I mean, I don't think you have to commit a murder to be able to write about a murder. Yeah, hanging out with, but I mean, like, hang out with a gangster. You could have hung out with a movie star. You could have hung out with somebody's evil mother-in-law, and made that person into a gangster when you were writing. So
And a
it
murderer
is,
or a murderer.
or a
Anybody.
murderer. You just riff off somebody who is in your sphere, and of course do the research, because when you do the research, like Rudraneil is committed to doing such good research, that your words ring with authenticity, even to yourself. Even if you've written a piece and you've read it and it seems okay, you go and you spend a day doing something which is somehow validates what you wrote. When you come back and read it again, it'll read different to you, because now you're writing what you've seen and you've experienced, and so of course everyone can't have access to a gangster, but whatever you have access to, use those people and those situations. And of course, now you can research everything. You have all the AIs to help you, and you can do like a nice mix of both things.
And if I may just add something, like crime fiction is especially rich and very flexible in that sense, because crime fiction and also like gives you that framework, right? So that's why we are seeing so much resurgence of crime fiction as well. And since we are at a crime festival, I mean, yeah, like because crime fiction allows you a certain moral framework in which to kind of hang your story, and it could be any kind of story.
Yeah, and that's true. So you could have like so many different kinds of crime fiction. For me, it was a police procedural, so I had to kind of be authentic about how the police work. But otherwise, it can be anything, right? So it doesn't have to. You don't have to have access to gangsters. That's absolutely
Absolutely.
true.
So, question for Rudraneil. Here. Yeah. So, just a quick one on the triggers for stray dogs that you mentioned. Could you talk about that?
Like how to get over the fear.
Yeah, I mean, it's a takeaway for people here. What are the triggers? What should people avoid?
Okay, so it's best done when you're actually with me and you're walking and you actually see it happen, because words are one thing, but experiencing it is very different. But a very simple thing is that as a dog who's living on the street considers that his or her home, and just like with human beings, has past experience that forms his or her reactions to what people are. So if a dog has faced a lot of abuse in the past, they would be scared of people. But nonetheless, if you're, let's say, walking past a dog and the dog suddenly barks at you, if you are able not to react to that, take that as the dog stating that this is my place, I hope you don't have any bad intentions. And you don't react, you keep walking past. 9 out of 10 times, nothing is going to happen to you. That dog is not going to come to you. That dog will realize immediately that you have nothing to do with anything and you're just walking past. So that's one way of looking at it. If, on the other hand, you have a stick in your hand and the dog barks and you go, hey! This dog then thinks that now you're going to attack. You're a threat. And then that can escalate. So, that's as much as I can say without actually being on the ground and going around and showing what to do. Another very important thing is, if you like dogs, for example, don't just approach dogs and touch them. That's important, because just like human beings, dogs have personal space. They don't want to be touched by whoever. And the thing to do is, if you want to make friends with the dog, is offer your hand near you, not reach towards the dog, but offer your hand and say, do you want to smell? If the dog comes to you and smells, that means he or she is ready to be touched also. So, simple things like that.
I think we had a question.
Yeah. Hi, Anuja and Rudraneil. Murder justified, wherein, say, for example, the guru in the akhada is a very horrible person. So there's loathing there. Someone goes and murders that person. or say the husband is someone who tortures. So, what is your take on a plot like this where the murderer is an evil person and is murdered, and finally you take it to an ending where maybe the murderer is not caught or not sent to jail?
See, what I feel, every murderer thinks they're justified. In their skewed way of thinking, the way they're coming to it, what they're doing is totally valid. That person has it coming for whatever reason. So, in their mind, they have justified it already. So, that is the clear case. Now, whether the rest of the world agrees with them and said, yes, this was a Jahil person who should have been, like taken out, but for the murderer, it's always going to be something that's why they're doing it. They feel is justified in their system. Whatever their little, their complaints are with that person or whatever is doing is justified. So they are always like that. And so I think that's the thing. Now, obviously, the other thing you say is trickier. But I guess as the writer, you take that call. While writing that book, if you become very fond of the murderer, if you become very unfond of the murderee, and you're saying, yeah, isko to, so sometimes your sleuth will keep quiet or they'll walk away or they'll pretend, like famously in Murder on the Orient Express,
Yeah.
for example, where clearly the guy's a
Yeah.
monster. And I hope there are no spoilers here, but it's such a classic. I'm assuming everyone's read it.
Please, we
you
cannot
know.
do that much.
So yeah, so there in something like that, you say, "Ha, theek hai, banta hai." But of course, there are moral responsibilities that come with that. Like you see a lot of Hindi movies recently, which are like you're saying this is highly problematic. You can't just. So there's that as well, which you have to weigh.
Actually, in Anuja's book, I mean, the murdered person is kind of like there's a plethora of motives and people who could have done it because he's not a particularly nice man.
It's interesting either to have someone who everybody loves and saying, why did this person get murdered? Or it should be like where there is a bunch of for someone is love, for someone is lust, for someone's lucre, someone's loathing.
No, I'm very interested in this question. So thank you for asking it, because I've in this book you will find that I think most people will find that there is not much to empathize or sympathize with the killer, but I want to set a book where my sympathies or empathies are completely with the killer. I think that person did the right thing, and I would have done that in his or her place, and then to go from there and see where that goes in the setting of a police procedural, in the legal, in the world. And a very interesting thing I remember this a good cop friend of mine told me. Um, so she was investigating this very strange case that happened when she was the DCP of a certain Southwest Delhi. And in one locality of Delhi, there was a young girl who was about 3 or 4 years old who went missing. And so the police started investigations and everything, couldn't really understand what happened. And then, funnily, the girl came back home the next day, and she said that some person took her and treated her really well, and he took her to his home, gave her dinner, this, that, whatever, bought her chocolates, and then dropped her back home. Um, but the police couldn't find any clues, so they let it go. But then it happened again about 6 or 7 months later, and it happened 2 or 3 times more. And then the cops were like, okay, this is something really weird is happening. So they put all their surveillance traps and everything in that area where this was happening. And they found out that there was a man who was a single father who had lost his child, who was about 4 years old, recently, and could not accept it and was in great grief and could not get over it. So he was bringing these kids home as a replacement for his daughter, and treating them just like he would with his own daughter, and then bringing them back. And I was like teary-eyed when I heard this, and I asked my cop friend, "What do you do in this situation?" She says, "You follow the legal procedure. The man is in jail." She was so clear about it when she said that to me. I was like, okay, you know. So I find that very interesting. It's a very strange moral universe to be in.
I think we are about done. And thank you so much. I'm sure you guys have more questions. Please feel free to bombard them outside or stick around for the next session and catch them later.